So I joined Cape Town Spurs in 1994 as a Colts. Back then, the Celtics Colts, it was under 19. So I was in my last year of school in matric, and I played in the Bay Hill tournament, a very famous, prestigious junior tournament, and got spotted by Mish Davre, and signed my first semi-pro contract at the age of 17. And played Celtics Colts for one season, and then started training with the senior team, which was great for me because that was the year that they almost won the league, and then the following year they won the double. So I mean, I was training with the likes of the late Roger Lupia, Sean Bartlett, David Modisi. There was a fantastic squad. And my role model at the time was a guy called Ronnie Zondi, who played in my position. So I had a nice grounding there, with some typical English coaches as well, which was nice. And yeah, in 1996, when David Rodwell sold the franchise and many of the top players to the John Comitas and family, the youngsters and a couple of the veterans got thrown in the deep end, and I was one of them. And that's when I started playing regularly for Cape Town Spurs. So I joined Mamelodi Sundowns in 1999. They had won the league twice in a row, and I arrived at the third season where they in fact won the double. And again, playing with the best players in South Africa at the time, Mambush, Daniel Madao. My mentor at the time was the late Jos Magalejo. And just surrounded by incredible talent. We played a 3-5-2 back in the day with Isaac Shai and Joel Fire Masilela bombing down the left and right. So it was just a great time to join Sundowns. And then in 2001, finally got to the African Champions League final against Al Ahly, which was one of the big highlights for me after winning the double with Sundowns in 99-2000. And yeah, and spent 3 fantastic seasons with an incredibly talented squad, mostly under the coaching mentorship of Paul Dolezal. And yeah, it was just a great time for me as a young player coming into that team. Wimbledon was a bit strange for me because I had enormous interest from West Ham, and I went on trial to West Ham for a week and really impressed Harry Redknapp, who was about to sell Rio Ferdinand to Leeds. But unfortunately, Natasha asked for far too much money. At that stage, I think it was £1.5 million in 2001. So for a player who was still quite young and who had played a handful of Bafana caps, it was a ridiculous amount of money. So it was probably one of my biggest disappointments, not being able to move to the English Premier League. And as a consequence, she tried to make up for it by sending me on loan to Wimbledon. But she had an agreement with the owner, who was a South African expat. And they hadn't informed Terry Burton, the coach at the time. So a lesson learned there, and for all young professionals who go on trial, is always make sure that the coach knows that you're coming. So when I arrived, I was playing in the reserves. I didn't get much of a shot in the first team, and I spent 3 months there playing in the reserves. I got a bit of interest from Nottingham Forest and Southampton, but other than that, it was rather disappointing, and I came back with my tail between my legs. I spent 6 years in Russia. I went over in 2002. At the time, after the West Ham and the Wimbledon saga, I realized that I had to start making a bit of money, and at that stage decided to become a little bit mercenary in my outlook. And Victor Bondarenko, who was our coach at Sundowns, who hails from Rostov, told me about the team being in a bit of trouble. He contacted the president in Rostov and arranged for me to sign with the team. I went over with Gift Kampamba at the time, with 10 games left in the season, and we had an immediate impact at the team. We went on an unbeaten run of 9 games and basically saved the team from relegation. And I think with Jacob Legeto already being there, and then myself and Gift arriving, I think the South African and just an African influence really set a nice foundation for us. And a lot of South Africans followed after that. And the following year, we got to the Russian Cup final, which was almost unheard of for at that stage. Rostov was considered as a minnow. They have since then grown in leaps and bounds and actually played Champions League football. So, but at that stage, we were really popular within the city for what we did, and it was again a fantastic 2 seasons of football. Just enjoying the small success that we achieved. In 2004, the president of Rostov forgot about renewing my contract. He didn't realize that within 6 months from the end of your contract, you were allowed to sign with a team of your choice. And he panicked a little bit when he realized that he hadn't offered me a new contract, and basically put a lot of pressure on me to either sign with Rostov or to be sold to the team of his choice. And the pressure wasn't particularly nice. There was a bit of mafia influence at the time, which was a bit unnerving. And so I decided to sign with the team that he had chosen for me, and that was Krylia Sovetov. And it was a good move, money-wise and playing-wise. Krylia had finished 3rd the previous season, and we're going to play European football. So that was great for me. And I spent 4 great years at the team, and really enjoyed myself. Played with some fantastic players, players like Yuri Jurashik, ex Celtic and Chelsea. Jan Koller, the tall Czech striker, who played of Borussia Dortmund fame. So the standard of football was forever increasing in Russia as they were trying to improve the league, spending a lot of their petrodollars on the league. So all in all, it was a fantastic 6 years spent in Russia. I did get offered another contract at Krylia Sovetov, but at that stage, myself and my wife, we had our oldest child, Nathan, who was 4 years old, and he needed to start school. And unfortunately, there wasn't an English school in Samara where we were based. So it was basically a family decision to come back to South Africa, as well as realizing that the World Cup was around the corner. I hadn't been called up in my 6 years in Russia, despite me playing some of my best football, I feel, in Russia. I hadn't been called up to Bafana. And I just thought that I would rather be closer to home and try my luck and try get into the squad. There were calls at the time as well. Bafana had failed to qualify for the Nations Cup for the first time. They lost to Nigeria in Port Elizabeth to seal their fate. And I arrived at the right time, I feel, for Bafana. And I also thought that Sundowns would be my preferred choice because I wanted to win things. At that stage of my career, I'd made a bit of money in Russia and wasn't really concerned about finances, but just really wanted to win trophies. Unfortunately, it didn't turn out that way. At Sundowns, my second stint, I think I was there for 3 seasons. There was a January window transfer where I think they brought in 14 players at some stage. And during those 3 years, there was just too many players coming in and out for us to retain any sort of consistency. So despite the fact that we had the best squad in the league, the squad was forever changing. And of course, subsequently, now that Pizzo has taken over, he's taken over the transfer reins. And of course, they've reached a great amount of success. So that period was very disappointing for me because I really wanted to win trophies, and that didn't happen, unfortunately. I left Sundowns on a very disappointing note. I was playing regularly for the team, trying to get the team back on track. I was out of the team, and then they realized that they needed some experience. I was brought back in. We started to win a few games, and we beat Wits University 3-0. Unfortunately, in the last 10 minutes of that game, I tore my ACL, which is a very serious injury. At my age, my contract was coming up as well. I did have an extension, but while I was injured, they brought me into the office and told me that they wouldn't be extending my contract, which was fair enough. There was no hard feelings about that, but I just expected them to at least offer to do my rehabilitation so that I could get fit again. So, which they didn't do. So after 6 years of playing for them, that I just felt hard done by in that regard. So now I've got 2 months left of my rehab. I'm in my early 30s, and I don't have a club. I don't have a salary, which is not a very good. I was in a predicament. Thankfully, John Comitas and Ajax showed interest, and they offered to do my rehab and get me back to full fitness, which I really appreciated. And I spent a good 2 seasons at Ajax, although with mixed fortunes. And I was rejuvenated, and I really enjoyed my time leading a very young team, and giving as much of my experience to the youngsters that wanted to. And players like Kamabiliat and Tatu Mokeke, Tulani Hlatshwayo, came from that team, and it's fantastic to see how they've progressed in their careers. I spent 2 seasons in Cape Town with my family, and again, it was a bit of a family decision. My wife was itching to get back to Johannesburg, and I had some interest from Wits, so very much a family decision to go back to Johannesburg. After my wife having followed me around the world, it was her time now. So it's all about compromise, as you may know. And I signed a 2-year contract with Wits, 1+1, and spent a great time under Gavin Hunt and a very talented team. And after 1 season, getting to the final of the Nedbank Cup in 2014, I decided that the daily monotony of training was really getting to me, and the aches and pains and perhaps operations that I'd had, which I wasn't able to fully recover from, whether it was because I was rushed back or whatever, or just simple old age. I wasn't able to do it anymore. I felt that I could carry on playing games. I still got a buzz out of playing games, but I decided that it was best that I retire at the age of 37 in 2014.